I don't know exactly when Brahma is joining us because I haven't received a message from him yet. So. He's joining us because I haven't received a message from him yet. Right. Okay. I'm perfectly in sync now. So I'll just send him another message because I don't really want to get going without him. Right, I've sent him another message. Let's see if he replies. So yeah, I'm looking forward to doing this. It should be good. Just put the sound through my headphones. Right. That's alright. Jimmy Pierre, thank you for tuning in. So yeah, looking forward to doing this. Let me just. The thing that I lean my phone against is actually playing up today. It's not staying up straight. Right. Right. We'll see how that goes. That's better. So yeah, we're just waiting the arrival of Brahma, and then we can get going. So yeah, so I'm going to be live every single day of WrestleMania week. So I said this earlier on the mini stream that I did just earlier, just explaining what's going on. So Monday obviously will be Monday Night Raw. Tuesday will be the Hall of Fame. Wednesday and Thursday will be Takeover Night 1 and Night 2. Friday will be SmackDown, and then obviously, of course, the weekend, Saturday, Sunday, will be WrestleMania Night 1 and Night 2. Now, WrestleMania week, we might have a few guests on. Definitely WrestleMania, we're going to have quite a few guests calling in, and we're going to have a bit of a watch party, so it won't just be me. But I don't know about the rest of the week, so we'll have to wait for that. But, yeah, as I say, we're just waiting on the arrival of Brahma, and then we can get going. Let me just get Nitro set up. Let me go on searches down there. WCW. WCW Nitro. So yeah. There we go. March 26th, 2001. The last ever episode. It's an hour and a half. I thought it was 2 hours. So as I say, just waiting on the arrival of Brahma. So, while we wait for Brahma, how about we talk about Fastlane? I know it was over a week ago now, but no, it wasn't. It's nearly a week ago now because it was a week tomorrow that it was a week tomorrow that it was aired. So, what do we think of Fastlane? It's certainly not the worst Fastlane pay-per-view that I've ever watched. Probably one of the best, if I'm being honest, because Fastlane is usually relatively boring. Because it's all very predictable and stuff like that. But I thought it was quite good. I liked the way The Fiend looked. A lot of people... I don't get the shit that this storyline with The Fiend and Randy Orton is getting. The Fiend Randy Orton storyline reminds me of the old days. The old days when a lot more supernatural, creepy, scary stuff happened. It reminds me of the old days, and people are clamouring for the old days, saying, we want the old days back, we want it when it was more edgy, we want it when it was, when a lot more, stuff happened that was edgier and stuff like that.
Give me a hell yeah!
Thank you, John, for the line. You're watching me that time, but then as soon as WWE, decide to do edgier content and creepier content and stuff that is verging on not PG, people complain about it. Like, people are never happy. It's surprising the amount of people that are giving this storyline shit, and I have no idea why. Because in my personal opinion, it is the best thing that's going on in WWE right now. In my personal opinion, only an idiot would think otherwise. But that's, I have to respect other people's opinions. Everybody is allowed to have opinions, but, hang on. What's John saying? I'm watching without sound. And it said Fastlane is really boring and predictable. No, actually, it wasn't as boring as it usually is. It's usually a lot more predictable, but going into it wasn't that predictable because I didn't know if Roman was going to go in as champion or Daniel Bryan was going to go in as champion. I thought Daniel Bryan might have a chance of winning, and he very nearly did. And of course, now we know that it's going to be a triple threat match at WrestleMania where Edge is going to pin Daniel Bryan so that Roman can stay strong. We know that that's what's going to happen. You know what I mean? There's a reason why. Daniel Bryan's been added. You watched NXT UK with UT, alright. There's a reason why Daniel Bryan's been added, and it's not because he's going to win, although he could. It's because WWE don't want Roman to be pinned because it destroys all the momentum that he has had over the last however many months. So, but the Fiend thing was amazing. Like, his look was amazing. Honestly, I don't understand the shit that it's getting. I really don't. I have to respect other people's opinions because everybody's allowed to have them, but I just don't understand it. The foundations are quite boring, pretty much, but the matches are good. Yeah. But yeah, it just frustrates me. Right, we're still Dragunov versus Gradwell, no DQ was main event, and that was nice. Hi, Alison. Still waiting on Brahma. He's not got back to me yet. I don't know what's going on with him. I don't really want to have to wait much longer. I did say I'd be starting starting about 11ish. Obviously I've started a bit earlier, but I was hoping he'd be prepared because he was his idea to come on this stream because he said it might be good to have somebody on the stream who actually watched it live on the day, which he's quite right because he could give his insights and be a lot better, but I'm just still waiting for him. I don't know where he is. I don't know what he's doing. I've sent him multiple messages. He's not got back to me. He's online on Messenger, but he's still not got back to me. So yeah, I don't know. I don't want to wait a lot longer, but I really do want to wait for him to be here to do this stream, because he can give his insights as to, you know, how it was watching it live and stuff like that. I'll leave it a bit longer. Oh dear. So yeah, apart from that, Fastlane was pretty, apart from the Fiend and the main event, it was pretty boring. If I'm being honest, like Biggie Apollo, obviously it was a botched ending, but I think it was supposed to be different, but in a way that didn't kind of sabotage Apollo or Biggie, so that they can have a WrestleMania match. What else? What else did we have? We had obviously the women's tag team match, which we knew the match was gonna. The reason why Sasha and Bianca were gonna be beat was because of some sort of argument between the two, which is exactly what happened. What else did we have in the pre-show? Apparently, I didn't see the pre-show, but apparently, Ali versus Riddle was an amazing match. So yeah, overall not the worst Fastlane pay-per-view I've ever seen. As I say, it's probably one of the best, and that's not really difficult if I'm being honest, because Fastlane is usually very boring and pretty much pointless. But yeah, some of the matches that have been added to WrestleMania, it's looking like it's going to be a very decent WrestleMania. You know what? It irritates me though, right? So, confirmed on SmackDown, Kevin Owens versus Sami Zayn at WrestleMania. Now, Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, when they face each other, they always tear the house down. They're very good in the ring together, and that's because they're best friends out of WWE. So usually best friends can put on the best matches. I mean, look at Shawn Michaels and Triple H when they were in their rivalry in the early 2000s. They usually, whenever they did have a match with each other, whatever kind of match it was, they always used to put on, really good matches. And it's the same for a lot of people who are best friends in real life, and then they have matches in the ring. They always turn out really well because best friends have good chemistry. So I'm fine, thank you, Alison. How are you? So that should be a good match. My irritation is with that match is that Sami Zayn has got on the WrestleMania pay-per-view ahead of some people that should have been there instead of him, because he ain't the best in the ring. He's nowhere near. He's nowhere near one of the best. There's a few superstars who are definitely going to be missing WrestleMania because WWE just not going to use them. And they're way better than Sami Zayn in the ring. It baffles me. It really does baffle me how WWE kind of go about their talent and what they do with it. But there we go. Not much I can say about that, really. It's up to WWE at the end of the day. What do us fans know? So yeah, I mean, I don't know. There's plenty of people who deserve to be there instead of Sami, but him going against Kevin Owens would have been the only match that I'm willing to watch of Sami Zayn at WrestleMania. Literally, he's crap. He's boring. Baffling. how he's got there ahead of many people. But ladies and gentlemen, I've just looked at my page. I didn't even realise we are 3 followers. We are 3 followers away from 200 followers. I mean, that's just amazing. I didn't realise we were that close. I didn't realise I got that many followers offline. You're not a fan of Sami Zayn. I'm okay, just... This is the Nitro where Shane McMahon turns up. Yeah, it's where he turns up saying he's bought WCW. I didn't realise it was the last episode of... the last episode of WCW that he did that. We need him as El Generico, yeah. Still not heard from Brahma. He must be busy, because usually he's one of the first people in the stream, and he wanted to be on this stream. He knew I was starting around about this time, so I'm hoping he'll be available soon, because I did say 11ish and now it is 11, so... Yeah, it's a hell of a kick, though. Yeah. Oh, gee whiz. Oh, I need to start this soon. This is dragging on already. I've been live for 17 minutes, well, nearly 20 minutes now, and yeah, I know, John, I know what you were getting at. I just need, as I say, I've been live for nearly 20 minutes, and I still haven't started the thing I'm watching to do as a watch along. Come on, Brahma. It's not like you to have me waiting this long. What do you do at night time when you're fed up? Booker T should be on. Kidman, relax. Brahma, what are you doing? Eat shit. What are you on about? What are you on about, Alison? Oh, eat shit is in, like, eat, junk food. I see what you mean. How about we try and give Brahma a ring? Hello?
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 Hi.
Sorry, you sound like you've just woke up.
Yeah, I was, fell asleep.
Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to wake you up.
No, it's
I know you wanted to
no,
be...
it's fine.
I know you
think
wanted
the clock,
Go on, sorry.
you know the clocks go forward now, don't you?
Yeah, I do, yeah.
Yeah. So, we'll effectively be having a 3-hour show in a sense.
Well, it's... I was just looking at it on the W Network. It says it's an hour and a half, the show. Not 2 hours, so...
So, what do you know about the final Nitro?
I don't know much about it, to be honest. I know that, obviously, that's the one where Shane McMahon shows up and says he's bought WCW. I know that. But that's about as much as I know about it, to be honest. Did you hear what I just said that John said?
About the what would you call it? It's on the WrestleMania card.
Yeah, he said he sorted it with Vince. Your chippy on a pole matches at WrestleMania.
Oh, okay. The main event is.
Yeah. You'll be the main event of night 2. Fuck Daniel Bryan, Edge, and Roman Reigns.
Well, after everyone's left, I suppose, then they'll make us the main event.
yeah. Just in front of no crowd.
Yeah, let me stick it on my end. Oh, you found it on the network?
On the network, yeah, and I've got it here, waiting to go.
Okay, ready when you are.
Okay, I'll click play now. Let me just get my headphones in. Right, we're starting this watch along, ladies and gentlemen. It's going to be cinematic style match. Okay. Don't know how you do a chippy on a pole match cinematic, but okay. Sean Lomas, thank you for tuning in. Oh, Vince McMahon kicks off Nitro.
So where are you up to in the broadcast?
I'm just watching Vince McMahon do his promo at the start.
So for those of you who are unaware, yesterday was the 20th anniversary of the final broadcast of WCW Nitro. Again, for those of you who maybe don't know, given it was such a long time ago now, Nitro was WCW's flagship Monday night show. Uniquely, it was always on live throughout its entire history, except for on a few occasions, whereas Raw, for a long time, was always pre-recorded. So, as WCW had. And famously, as Eric Bischoff likes to remind everybody, it beat Raw in the ratings for 83 consecutive weeks. Even by the NWO angle and Hogan's heel turn. To a point where WWE were actually becoming unprofitable, and it did actually nearly drive them out of business.
Yeah.
I don't know if John has anything to add on that, with regards to WCW.
Well, the thing is, when I started watching like wrestling around about the 1999 mark, so like smack bang in the middle of the Attitude Era. Smack bang in the middle of it, and sort of. And I knew about WCW. My cousin even went to a WCW live show, and he used to love WCW. He used to tell me to watch it all the time. I never ever did. Oh God, Tony Schiavone. Yeah. I just never bothered. I always was a WWE person, and always have been. Like, even with all the WCW stuff on the network, I've barely, in fact, not watched any of it. Apart from that Sting versus Bret Hart match that I put on the other day, when I was doing that watch along. that's it. I do want to get into watching some of it because apparently some of it's been really good, and I've been told like what pay-per-views to watch and stuff like that. So I will get into it and watch it. But just back in the day, never even crossed my mind to watch it. I've always just watched WWE or WWF as it was then.
I mean, look, WCW had its moments. It had some legendary moments. It had some great moments that changed wrestling. But I'm also a bit of a realist when it comes to WCW. There is a reason it went out of business, and that's because towards the end it was shit. Let's be honest, it was shit. And what you'll see tonight when you look at this card and people that appear on it, you know, whether it's Ric Flair, whether it's Sting, you know, Stacy Keibler, you know, you got Shane Helms, who obviously would become Hurricane Helms. You got people like Rey Mysterio on this as well, Booker T, Scott Steiner. You know, all of these people went on and had decent WWE careers, or you know, in some cases main evented or held titles in the WWE. So it wasn't that WCW was shit talent wise, it's just that the people running the show were you know, just a bit incompetent. But one of the biggest reasons as to why ultimately they went out of business was the guys behind it, so a company called Time Warner, who had at the time merged with the internet company AOL, which is a bit of a blast from the past. I remember the days when everyone had an AOL email address, and not anymore. But when the merger took place, one of the things they wanted to cut out from the portfolio was wrestling. They didn't see wrestling as having a future in their new merged company. That was the first thing. Second thing was, and mainly due to the falling ratings, no TV networks wanted to broadcast WCW. You know, because TNT, obviously, because of Turner merging with AOL, was going to be dropping WCW wrestling, so there was nowhere to broadcast it. So you'll probably know stories of Eric Bischoff tried to get a few others in a consortium to purchase WCW, but then they pulled out at the very last minute. Because they couldn't buy a TV deal. If you watch the second to last episode of Nitro, Eric Bischoff actually breaks character and he addresses that on live TV, which was pretty much the beginning of the end. I mean, well, technically, it was, you know, signalling that, you know, what was about to happen a week later. So basically, Bischoff and his consortium pulled out, and Time Warner put up WCW's assets for sale, and came in and purchased it, apparently for about $1 million, would you believe? Or maybe just a bit more, maybe $3 million, which, when you consider how profitable WCW had been in its heyday, and the video collection that they had access to, you know, yeah, you're right, John, it was dirt cheap. I mean, Jericho famously joked as well, when he realised how cheap it had gone for, he would have probably bought it himself. And, you know, that was unfortunate. The original plan was, as WWE themselves, you know, Vince McMahon himself had said, was that he wanted WCW to be a separate brand. It was going to continue, you know, have its own show and everything. But the networks, you know, nobody wanted to take up WCW, nobody wanted to broadcast its shows. So that's what really put an end to that. And then on top of that, as you'll remember, you might recall an episode of Raw, for the final half an hour, they switched from it being Raw to a WCW show with WCW branding. They brought out WCW commentators, so one of them was Arn Anderson, and the main event for that evening was Buff Bagwell versus Booker T for the WCW title, which ended up being short. Decided to interfere in the match. The crowd didn't respond very positively to the match, so that put an end to the idea of a separate WCW brand. So apologies for that little history lesson.
No, it's fine. It's nice to know these things. I didn't know any of these things, you see.
And
So,
obviously you're listening to Ric Flair talking about really the history of WCW. For a bit of context, the main event on the final episode of Nitro the main event on the first episode of Nitro was Sting versus Rick for the US title.
yeah.
And fittingly, and essentially, you know, feel free to agree or disagree with me, and John as well. You know, I would say Sting and Ric Flair's feud was probably, you know, the most famous of all of WCW's feuds. I mean, obviously you had some legendary feuds: Goldberg versus the NWO, Sting versus the NWO, Hulk Hogan versus Ric Flair, Randy Savage versus DDP. But, you know, Sting and Ric Flair, you know, were the two big faces of WCW. You know, when you think of WCW's glory days, Sting and Ric Flair were the two, were the two good guys, as it were.
Yeah. Let me just read some of the chat. John says the production of WCW was poor. WWE bought WCW for dirt cheap. He said whoever was to buy it was going to need some network connections because that was the biggest issues. I don't think Jericho could pull them strings at that point. Bischoff has spoken about the issue many times.
Yeah, that was the big issue here. It was, you know, no networks wanted to put WCW, and I think that was also as a result of the program and the brand had gotten so bad that it was just damaged. And, you know, we hope that doesn't really ever happen to AEW. But, you know, it's still very early days with AEW. Yeah, Goldberg versus DDP at Halloween Havoc, one of the all-time great WCW matches. I remember talking to DDP about it in the airport. He said that for himself, that was the highlight of his career as well. And for me, it was probably the last great match for WCW. Well, aside from there's a Benoit versus Bret Hart match that they did when Nitro was broadcast from the same arena where Owen Hart died, which, whatever we might think of Chris Benoit now, that was a good match. And for me, that was one of the matches where I saw, you know, that's when Chris Benoit was really starting to come into his own as a singles performer.
Yeah.
I mean, look, you know, we can always, you know, whatever, like I said, whatever we think of Chris Benoit, you know, he was a talented guy, and indeed, you know, towards the end of WCW's life and towards the end of his career in WCW, you know, he was starting to shine as a singles competitor, and, you know, WCW saw that, and they snapped him up. And in it, you know, as you might know, in his final match, he won the WCW title against Sid, Psycho Sid, or Sid Vicious as he was called in WCW. You know, the crowd reacted very well to that, so he was a very popular guy. You know, personally, he's not someone who I likes on the mic, but, you know, he was very popular. So, you know, WCW had talented guys and girls on their roster. I'm sure, John, you'll agree with that. You know, a lot of them, as I said, you know, went on to main event in WWE. You know, people like Rey Mysterio, people like Eddie Guerrero, people like, you know, even from the final episode of Nitro. So, I mean, they kicked off with Booker T versus Scott Steiner for the so it was a double title match. It was for the WCW title and the US title. And again, this is one of those times where Booker T was starting to come into his own, and, you know, people do criticize Vince Russo for some of the crap that he did in WCW that killed it, and I stand by that as well. But some of the good stuff that he did do, which even Bischoff was reluctant to do, and people like Hogan and Nash were trying to hold back, was pushing the younger stars.
I mean, I'm just looking at this now. Like, we've got Scott Steiner versus Booker T, and I actually never knew that Scott Steiner had been a world champion in WCW.
He was world champion in WWE as well. He won the.
Yeah, I knew that, but I didn't know he was a world champion in WCW. I didn't know that.
He was at the time. Him and Booker T were one of the few people to have actually beaten Goldberg. So.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, again, Scott Steiner, he was a good I think he was a good WCW champion. But these were people who should have been champion earlier in their careers, and that was WCW's fault for not pushing their younger stars. That's why the likes of Austin and Foley, Jericho, Big Show, Regal, Benoit, Malenko, Guerrero, all ended up leaving and going to the WWE because they just weren't getting the opportunity.
Give me a hell yeah!
Yeah.
I said give me a hell yeah!
And again, if Hogan hadn't agreed to that heel turn, the NWO would have not been a thing.
Well, no. Because you couldn't have had NWO come in as faces, really.
Well, the original plan was Sting was going to be the leader of the NWO, but I just don't think Sting ever had. And I hate to say this as a massive Sting fan, Sting never really had that. What is it? He never had that star power outside of wrestling like Hogan did.
No, that's true, yeah.
So when Hogan turned heel, essentially he had been a heel previously at some point in his career in Japan, but when he turned heel the first time for the NWO, that sent shockwaves throughout wrestling.
Yeah.
Because it's never been done before. The only thing that would be comparable in this day and age would be John Cena turning heel in that way. And obviously they alluded to that in the Bray Wyatt match last year, if you remember, when they put him in those various clips and various matches, in different scenarios, and they put him as leader of the NWO.
Mm.
Do you remember that?
I mean, this match isn't too bad so far. I mean, I really like Booker T. I rate him, obviously. Scott Steiner, I never was a massive fan of him, to be honest. Never watched any of his WCW stuff, but I did watch his WWE stuff, and I never really rated him that much in the ring. But it's not a bad match just so far.
No, but I don't know if you caught that bit, what I said about John Cena.
I'll say what you said about John Cena again.
So, what I said was, Hogan turning heel, the impact that had, the gravity of that, the only thing that would come close in this day and age would have been John Cena turning heel. And
yeah.
They kind of referred to that in the Firefly Funhouse match last year at WrestleMania, when they put John Cena in that NWO sketch. Do you remember?
Yeah, I do remember, yeah.
And then he actually makes reference to the fact about turning heel. So it was probably an indirect reference to the fact that, not indirect, a direct reference to when Hogan turned heel.
Yeah.
And I remember watching that as well. So, if you or anyone else wants to go away and watch some WCW stuff after this, the stuff that you should watch, Hogan's debut match in WCW against Ric Flair at Bash at the Beach '94 when he won the world title in his first match, as Hogan would do, pulling all the strings, pulling out his political cards, politicking and all that. It's worth watching that. The revival of Hulkamania, as it were. Then Bash at the Beach '96, where he turns heel. and then he cuts a very infamous promo. Definitely a very memorable moment that was. When Goldberg beat Hogan on Nitro, that was also a very memorable moment. Memorable for all the wrong reasons, but when the Ultimate Warrior had his run in WCW, it was certainly a low point for WCW, but, nevertheless, it's worth probably just watching for the shit show that it was. Goldberg versus DDP at Halloween Havoc 1998. Rey Mysterio versus Eddie Guerrero at Halloween Havoc 97.
Yeah.
Sting versus Hogan at Starrcade 97. The ending to the match was beset with botches and controversy, but it's worth watching because of it was certainly one of the biggest feuds in WCW's history.
Did you say Eddie Guerrero versus Rey Mysterio?
Halloween Havoc 97.
Yeah.
Yes.
Apparently, a lot of people say that's one of the greatest matches of all time. A lot of people reference that as being one of the greatest matches of all time, so I really want to see that.
It's up there.
Because I'm a big fan of both, so...
And Booker T, won the WCW title again for the second time in his career. And, of course, he was the last person to win it on Nitro.
Sorry, say again.
So Booker T won the match.
Yeah, he did, yeah.
Obviously, he became the last person to win the WCW and the US titles. And then it switches to Vince McMahon being on the phone. We don't really know who he's on the phone to be honest. But this is a recurring theme throughout the show. I don't know if they've still got it in the WWE Network version, but there is a point where he literally actually fires Jeff Jarrett on the air. So, Jeff Jarrett himself doesn't appear on the broadcast of Nitro. He didn't appear at all. It was just an archive footage of Jeff Jarrett. McMahon watches it and then he turns to the screen and he kind of mocks Jeff Jarrett's accent and his promo and says that you're, how he used to call himself Double J or JARRETT.
Yeah.
He would say you're FIRREDD fired. And in real life, I think Jarrett attempted to sue WWE for defamation. So, there was actually a lot of beef, and as you might be aware, Jarrett was one of the driving forces in establishing TNA.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
With Dixon Carter. And then in an even greater twist of irony, some years later, he would actually come back and be inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. So, clearly, there are bridges that can be mended.
Yeah, I mean, this, as they always say in WWE, never say never. I mean, I'm sure back in the day when people talked about Jeff Jarrett coming back to WWE, people were like, it's never ever going to happen. It's a perfect example of never say never. Which is why I always believe, even if it's not really to wrestle, even if it's just for a Hall of Fame induction, I do believe that CM Punk will come back. Going on to a completely different subject, but yeah. Anyway, I won't get onto that subject because we could talk about that for hours. But yeah,
no, John Hogan turning heel, I think, was what was needed both for his career and to give WCW something a bit different. I mean, I think WWE was stupid to let Hogan go. I mean, they didn't actually... Well, I mean, technically they didn't fire Hogan, but they didn't renew his contract, and, Vince didn't really make an effort to keep him on. Vince was under the impression that, Hulk Hogan's popularity was beginning to wane. Bret Hart was seen as the up-and-coming star, but infamously, Hogan never really agreed to a match with Bret Hart. And, when his contract was coming up for renewal, McMahon just basically thought, Hulkamania is dead, let him, it's fine if he wants to go and do other things. Hogan was adamant that he wasn't going to return to wrestling, so he started his movie career. The less said about that, the better. But
let me just interrupt you a second. This entrance music for this Team 3 Count, what the hell? Like, what the hell?
Well, back in the day, that was all the rage.
Oh, filthy animal. Billy Kidman. Wow, of course, yeah.
Well, Rey Mysterio without his mask.
Yeah, that as well. Yeah, I mean, wow.
I mean, these are the sorts of stupid things WCW were doing with the Mexican wrestlers, making them remove their mask. These gimmick matches, hair versus mask matches, and, as much as they were good to push these talents, they simply just didn't understand the traditions of Mexican wrestling.
Yeah.
And of course, Billy Kidman would have a solo career in WWE as well. Not very successful, but he's his real name, Peter Gruber. He's now one of the producers backstage with WCW. I mean, WWE, sorry.
John says, Vince Russo, or Russo, killed WCW. He booked half of this. He booked half of this stripe.
Well, Russo wasn't producer at this stage. He had already left by the previous summer. He was basically driven out after he proposed that someone called Tank Abbott, who was a UFC fighter who had signed with WCW, who, let's just be honest, was crap in the ring and on the mic. He suggested that Tank Abbott should be the WCW champion. Now, given that it was his decision to make David Arquette and himself WCW champion, it didn't go down well, and he was effectively fired after that point. If anything, and this is going to be a controversial thing to say, and John, I don't know whether you agree with me on this, but I think Jeff Jarrett as WCW champion also helped kill the company. I mean, Jeff Jarrett was never world champion material at any point in his career, whether in WWE, TNA, WCW. He is, in my opinion, one of the most overrated wrestlers of all time. David Arquette, I mean, in their crazy mind, they saw it as a great promo. So it was for the movie called Ready to Rumble, which extensively featured WCW wrestlers, and coincidentally a young John Cena as an extra. But some crazy people in WCW thought it'd be a great promo to put the title belt on David Arquette. Ironically, the movie completely bombed at the box office. So not only did they get it wrong in that sense, but then they completely devalued, the WCW title and the history that stood for. John, I don't think he was right in any era for WWE champion or WCW champion. I mean, that's just me. That's just my personal opinion. But there's just something that never really resonated with me, and he just didn't seem like a main event champion, a main event player. He was never the face of the company, and the only reason he was the face of WCW was probably because they had nobody else. And TNA, obviously, he was the driving force behind TNA.
Yeah, I'm just realising I've just heard his name mentioned a couple of times in this match. We're seeing a very young Shannon Moore here. Not very memorable in WWE, but all these names that I didn't realise were in WCW. Like it's actually quite interesting watching this, seeing some of the names that I didn't know were in WCW.
Well, one of the next matches, I don't know where you are in the broadcast, is Chavo Guerrero.
I was in the three-way cruiserweight title cruiserweight tag team match there, but
so the next one is Chavo versus Shane Helms.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I know who they are.
And obviously, as many of you will know, Shane Helms will become the Hurricane.
The Hurricane, yeah.
Helms with his sidekick Mighty Molly, who, of course, more recently has been inducted into the Hall of Fame.
Well, it is going to be inducted.
Going to be, and personally, I actually think Hurricane Helms should be in there as
The
well.
Hurricane definitely will be inducted at one point.
For the gimmick.
And he should be, and Hurricane should be. Oh, Trish Stratus. He should induct Mighty Molly, in my opinion.
Probably will. It will either be him or one of the female stars from the Attitude Era, I think. Or possibly Mick Foley, given, Molly Holly's involvement with the hardcore division. That could work. But, as you can see, as I keep saying, there are a lot of people who featured on this final episode of Nitro.
Yeah.
Who would play, a big role in WCW in some
See,
form.
talk about Chavo Guerrero for a second. I really rated him when he was in WWE. I enjoyed a lot of his matches, but he was just never treated seriously. And it kind of annoyed me. He had a lot of ability in the ring.
I think he was always seen as, he was always seen as, a sidekick or just secondary to Eddie Guerrero.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure is something he never minded. I mean, and especially after Eddie Guerrero unfortunately passed on, he was always more than happy to kind of carry on his uncle's legacy. But, Chavo should have been given a bigger push than he had. I mean, he was the ECW champion at some point, so...
Yeah.
But,
My God, this music of Shane Helms. What was this music about in WCW? My God. My God.
There were a lot of rip-off themes. I mean, DDP's theme was a rip-off of Smells Like Teen Spirit.
Yeah.
Raven's theme was a rip-off of the song by Nirvana, Come As You Are. Chris Jericho's theme music in WCW was a rip-off of Pearl Jam. Sid Vicious's theme was a rip-off of a tune called China White by the Scorpions.
Yeah.
Not much unlike WWE. Obviously they're too cheap to pay for the actual tune, or compose something, or so they just compose something themselves, change it by a few bars, so it avoids copyright issues.
Yeah.
So it was Jimmy Hart who actually composed a lot of the music for WCW.
I mean, I'd say one of the only people that they actually made an effort with and got him, decent themes, and it's understandable why. It's Triple H. I mean, they got Motorhead to do his themes.
Yeah, but I mean, Motorhead, obviously, I think themselves were big wrestling fans, and
I know. What's his face? The lead singer of Motorhead, is it Lemmy? Lemmy. I know
yeah.
he was good friends with Triple H, so I suppose it would make sense.
Excuse me for a second. I'll be right back.
Okay. Jericho and Big Show discussed this because they left before they went under. Look at Buff Bagwell. They ripped him a new one. So this is a decent match. Chavo versus Hurricane. Well, not Hurricane. Versus Shane Helms. As I said, I rated Chavo Guerrero in the ring. Always thought Shane Helms was good as well. So. Oof, 2.
Sorry for the noise in the background, just making a
No-
cup of tea.
no worries. Buff looked great, but wasn't any good in the ring.
Yeah, that's the thing. Buff was actually popular. People forget he was popular, but John, as I keep mentioning, with a lot of the people that they pushed in WCW towards the end, it was probably far too late with regards to their WCW careers. And for Buff Bagwell, you know, he wasn't well received when he made the jump to WWE, ironically.
Yeah.
And also he was sacked, well, not so much fired, but basically they decided not to renew his contract because they had issues regarding his professionalism. There was a famous incident where he apparently feigned injury to not work an episode of SmackDown, and his mother, Judy Bagwell, who took part in some ridiculous feuds in WCW, including Judy Bagwell on a forklift match. Yeah, the less said about that, the better. But basically, yeah, she effectively phoned in sick on his behalf. Can you imagine that? Imagine your mum phoning Vince McMahon to tell Vince McMahon that your son's too sick to come into work today. Oh dear. Imagine that. You know, you're a 30-something-year-old adult male, and
You're
your
in
mum has to
WWE.
ring your boss. Your mum has to ring your boss to tell, well, in any scenario, your mum has to ring your boss to tell you that you're not coming into work today.
Well, yeah, I suppose in any scenario, I suppose that's embarrassing,
In any
but...
scenario, it's hilarious, but
Yeah.
I mean, oh god.
Judith Bagwell on a pole match.
No, don't even think about that, John. That's an awful image, and there was just so much crap
Shane
that went
Helms
on
wins
with
the match.
WCW.
That was a good match, that. I enjoyed that.
Yeah,
Just to say something about that match, that referee, was that a young... Can't remember his name. Scott Armstrong?
yes, it was.
Yeah.
Yes.
See, this is what I love. I'm recognising all these faces. I'm liking
And
this.
these are all, ironically, you know, this is the point that
Give me a hell yeah!
Bill Smith, thank you for that. Okay, go ahead.
I think that WCW was full of talentless people when it really wasn't. There were some really good talents there. It's just towards the end, WCW themselves didn't know what to do with these people. So in a way, and I hate to say this, WCW going out of business the way that it did was actually not necessarily a bad thing.
Just looking at this Booker promo, you can see how emotional he is.
Oh, definitely. I think with Booker T, he, you know, genuinely at that point in time, he had no idea what direction his career was going in, what was going to happen in WWE. I mean, you know, I'm still disappointed about the fact he never got to really main event WrestleMania, nor did he ever get a run with the WWE title. You know, at least he won the World Heavyweight Championship, and he was King of the Ring. And you know, for me, the King Booker segment is one of the best gimmicks of all time. But you know, what was the point? I forgot what was the point I was making. Sorry, I can't remember the point I was making.
I hate it when that happens.
I know. Trying to cycle back. What was I talking about just a moment ago? So
I was talking about how emotional Booker T was.
yeah, and just before that, I think a case of WCW not knowing what to do with the talent that they had.
Oh, Lance Armstrong.
And Lance Storm, you mean?
Lance Storm. Who's that? Yeah, fucking hell. Lance Storm.
Yeah, no, what I said was, controversially, and, you know, feel free to call me out on this, you or John or anyone else, I actually think WCW going out of business the way it did, some people say it was a bad day for wrestling. I mean, it was. I actually think it was a good thing as well, because there were a lot of talents there who got the push or got the spotlight that they deserved in WWE after WCW went out of business. I don't know what you think of that.
Michael Cole. Oh, look how young he looks.
I don't know what you think of that, what I just said.
Sorry, say again. See you, John.
Yeah, see you, John. Good night. Good night. So yeah, what I said, Tom, was WCW going out of business the way that it did. I think it wasn't such a bad thing for wrestling, because there were a lot of superstars who then went over to the WWE, who got the pushes and the spotlights that they deserved.
Yeah.
That they would have not otherwise got.
I mean, yeah, as you say, it probably did. As much as obviously people who loved WCW were sad about it ending, of course, it was actually probably a good thing it did.
WCW ended for me personally after they decided to end Goldberg's streak, and then they.
I didn't ignore him, Alison. I said goodnight to him. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, good night, John. Good night, John. Sorry, what was I saying, Tom? For me, WCW ended when they decided to end Goldberg's streak, and then they did the infamous finger poke of doom.
Yeah.
And everything just went downhill after that, to be honest. That's when it really ended. So that was like about 2 years before, the company, got sold to WWE. No, nobody's ignoring. It's fine. So, yeah, I think. What was it I was saying? Yeah, I mean, Booker T is now regarded as one of the great WWE superstars. He's a Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
Rey Mysterio, is still having a WWE career even now. Goldberg, still coming back and making appearances even. William Regal, okay, he jumped ship before WCW closed, but, still very much front and center of NXT. Who else do we have? Charles Robinson, one of the more WWE.
Yeah.
Ric Flair still featuring every now and again.
Yeah.
So, WCW is well in wrestling. I mean, Sting in NW, Tony Schiavone, Jim Ross. Many of you won't know that he was a WCW commentator for a very long time. Arn Anderson, Tully Blanchard, Jake the Snake, featured in WCW briefly as well. Chris Jericho, of course. AJ Styles was in WCW. Triple H was in WCW. Even The Undertaker briefly was in WCW.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think, who else is on the roster or recently who appeared in WCW. That's all I can think of at the moment, really. Tori Wilson.
Yeah.
Very much. Where are we up to match-wise?
Just watching this. Austin was in WCW. That's right. Yeah. Just this match for the tag team titles. That's what's on at the moment.
Who said that about Austin in WCW?
John.
Oh yeah, I see that. It's a bit of a delay on my end.
Let's not, Alison.
No, Austin was, he was a very big mid-card performer. He was very popular. He also had hair back in that day. He had long blonde hair. He used to be part of the tag team with the late Brian Pillman and father of Brian Pillman Jr. In a tag team called the Hollywood Blondes.
Oh, a super kick from Chuck Palumbo there. Oh, nice.
And I'm trying to think, and Mick Foley as Cactus Jack in WCW as well. So, you know, a lot of these big stars were, they kind of cut their teeth in WCW before they became big in the WWE.
We don't need to, thank you, Alison. If you don't want to talk about wrestling or anything normal, then you don't have to be here. Anyway. Oh yeah, of course, Stacey Keebler was in WCW as well. Evening, Sean. Hope you're okay. John, please don't interact with this conversation. Let's move the conversation back to wrestling or something normal, please. Before I mute and remove people.
Where are you up to in the broadcast?
Get in there, dude. Just Stacey Keith was in the ring with. Is that Charlie Haas? I don't know who that is. I think it's Charlie Haas.
Who has the biggest boobs in wrestling? Oh dear.
Please, I know that's kind of wrestling related, but let's not really talk about that. I mean, it is kind of wrestling related, but I'd rather not get into that conversation live on stream. I mean, by all means, John, we can have that conversation privately, but not on stream.
Oh dear.
Can we get this stream back to some sort of normality, please? Some sort of normal conversation, as I said before.
Are we having a PG chat then tonight?
Well, I'm not saying it has to be PG chat. I mean, you can swear all you want and stuff like that, but you know, I'd rather not talk about sex and boobs on stream, and to a certain extent, Mae Young. Yeah, let's not talk about Mae Young's boobs, please.
Oh dear.
That's the last thing we need to talk about. Let's get this stream back to some sort of normality, please. As I said before, I have to mute and remove people.
So I believe this was Sean Stasiak who came out.
Oh, Sean Stasiak, that's it, not Charlie Haas.
And famously was dropped from the invasion angle just days before WrestleMania because he stupidly revealed what was going to happen on a radio show. So I think I mentioned this to you when we watched WrestleMania 17 together. You noticed that the WCW superstars sat in the audience. The intention was they were going to come to the ring and help Shane McMahon win the match.
That was a very quick match.
But because Sean Stasiak ruined the angle, they basically had to scrap that, and he was basically put on leave until about July or August of that year. Can you imagine that, shooting yourself in the foot like that, ahead of like what could have been the biggest promo you would have ever been involved in?
Just say the last bit again. I heard some of what you were saying. I just didn't see the last bit.
So Sean Stasiak messing that up, and then obviously not being involved with WCW until about July or August of that year. Could you imagine messing up the biggest angle that you could have possibly been ever involved in your career?
Just say that last bit again, because somebody just messaged me and it distracted me. Sorry, I'm not ignoring you. It's
Okay. What I said was, Sean Stasiak
Yeah.
messing that up, revealing it on the radio, and then obviously getting put on leave and ruining the angle. Could you imagine messing up your own career like that? You know, you're about to become involved in one of the biggest angles ever in your career. All you have to do is just shut up for a few days. For a few days.
It'd be. I'd be so annoyed. Like, I'd be like, why the fuck didn't I just shut up? Like, that's literally what.
Not just that, he ruined it for the other guys involved as well.
Exactly. Like, I don't even know how I'd be. I mean, I don't know. It's. I don't know.
Thankfully, with at least with like say Stacy Keibler, we all got to, in inverted commas, enjoy Stacy Keibler,
Yeah.
as did George Clooney as well, famously.
John says, I think that could be an easy mistake to make on live radio. Live radio or live TV is carnage.
I mean, was it an easy mistake though? I mean, it's about professionalism. You go onto a radio show, you know that, you know what to say and what not to say, especially in wrestling, which is so storyline and secrets orientated.
Yeah.
You don't just go and give away the results on live TV. I mean, WCW infamously tried to do that with the Mick Foley match. It backfired on them. But, if we were told weeks in advance, what was going to happen in XYZ match, we wouldn't bother, a lot of the time we wouldn't bother tuning in. I mean, I know with soaps, like Corrie and EastEnders, they release the spoilers to drive up interest, to get people to tune in. But, I think it's a bit different with soaps. What was going to happen in XYZ match? Because I think they have a commitment to the TV producers and everything and the networks to kind of tell them what storylines they have coming up.
Yeah.
But Sean Stasiak doing that was stupid. And then DDP giving his interview, that was quite sad and emotional as well. People forget, and I'm sure you knew this, John. I'm sure you knew this, Tom. DDP started his professional wrestling career very, very late in his career, and became champ at 40. So, he was already in his mid-40s by the time WCW ended, and, he looked really old by the time he debuted in WWE.
Yeah.
But, DDP was, before we had, people who were like a foot shorter like Daniel Bryan, DDP was the ultimate underdog in WCW terms, being in the big matches but losing. And I don't know if they've played it already, but a nice package showing all the former WCW superstars and world champions. Have they shown that on your end?
What?
The video package of all the former
yeah, they did, yeah.
A lot of people who are no longer with us, like Harley Race, Dusty Rhodes, Roddy Piper. Roddy Piper, who wasn't a champion, but, nevertheless featured on this. And then, lots of legendary names like Booker T, Scott Steiner, Goldberg, Sting, Big Show, Hogan, Ron Simmons, so aka Farouk, now famous for going damn all the time.
Yeah.
But I don't know how many of you would know, or, you should probably all know that Ron Simmons, aka Farouk, was actually the first African-American / black guy to win a major world title for a major wrestling promotion when he won the WCW world title in 1992.
I knew that, yeah.
So, that was very much a watershed moment for wrestling, and a lot of, especially African American wrestling fans as well. I think The Rock, in his book, The Rock says, or certainly in an interview somewhere, he cited that as being for him personally inspiring as well.
Yeah.
And Booker T has referenced that, and a lot of black superstars have referenced that as well. Mark Henry, I know, mentioned it. So for everything that WCW got wrong, and this chat tonight, it should be not just about this final episode of Nitro. It's for anyone to discuss WCW reflecting on 20 years since its demise. But for a lot that it did wrong, there were a lot of stuff it did right.
Yeah.
It was the first major wrestling promotion to do a live weekly TV show.
Yeah.
So even WWE were not doing that. So it was revolutionary in that sense. It was the first wrestling show to go on for 3 hours live. So long before Raw was 3 hours. Nitro were doing 3 hours.
Yeah.
Obviously, they cut down by the time this show rolled around, but they were revolutionary in that sense.
Yeah, and I mean, like, it's... I think if you thought about any wrestling promotion, you could say, well, they've done a lot of good, but they've done a lot of bad as well. I mean, you can use WWE as an example. I mean, for instance, if WWE ever kind of didn't go out of business, but if they ever just stopped making content, and maybe you could say the same thing. Well, they did a lot of good, but they also did a lot of bad. So you could say that about any wrestling promotion, I think.
No, of course,
but the thing is with WCW, the bad stuff was really bad.
No, of course, and but as I said, there was a lot of revolutionary stuff. I mean, for example, with the NWO, it was a case of for the first time ever, the heels were being cheered.
Yeah.
Which is something that never really happened until, and as I said to you, John, earlier in the conversation, maybe that was down to Hogan. That was maybe down to Hogan's popularity in making it work.
Yeah. I'm just realising Rey Mysterio and Kidman doing double duty on this Nitro.
Yeah, they won the match earlier in the show to become the number one contenders for the titles, and now, double duty, as it were.
Not that I'm complaining, because I do like Kidman and I do like Rey Mysterio.
Sure. No, they were good performers.
And they won. That's good.
Yeah, most of the people that deserve to win.
Hang on, did WCW have cruiserweight tag championships?
No, they had the tag team titles and the cruiserweight tag team titles.
Yeah, that's what I just said. Cruiserweight tag championships. I think that's. I mean, that's not a bad idea. I don't think. Oh, Sting. See, I look at this thing here. I mean, I know he wears face paint and stuff like that, but I mean, it might seem a bit stupid what I'm about to say, but he doesn't seem like he's aged. But again, as I say, it's the face paint that really does that. And he dyes his hair, obviously. Please, Alison, just refrain from commenting about it, please. So Vince backstage walking. Alright, we're getting the main event now. I'm looking forward to this main event, it should be good. What did you say there, Sean? I can't see your comment. You get on this stream so I can see what you've put. Another good episode of AEW this week. Perhaps I've not really been watching AEW the last few weeks, so I've kind of lost touch with it, if I'm being honest. I have had my jab, Sean. I'm having my second jab on Thursday. Looking forward to just getting it done out of the way. Hang on, YouTube. Mine's in 9 weeks. How do you feel after the first jab? My shoulder was in agony, couldn't lift, waited for a few. Well, after my first jab, the day after, in fact, sorry, the night of and the day after, I felt shocking. I couldn't get out of bed. I was literally, it was like I had the flu. You know what I mean? I had flu-like symptoms. It was awful, and my shoulder was killing me all day after having it. The day after, my shoulder was fine, but I felt awful. I'm hoping it's not going to be the same second time round. Anyway, let's get on to talking about this Sting Ric Flair match. The main event of the final ever WCW Nitro.
I mean, it wasn't a classic Sting or Ric Flair match. Ric Flair was so out of shape, he kept his t-shirt on.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, both men were just keen to wrestle each other in the ring, you know, just as a kind of final curtain call for WCW Nitro and effectively for WCW.
Yeah.
And, you know, what better way than for the two greatest faces in WCW's history to close out the show, the two greatest rivals.
Yeah.
And it was Sting who came out on top, ultimately.
Which makes sense.
No, of course. And, you know, Sting, Ric Flair, Charles Robinson, you know, all of whom, you know, would still have a lot to give to the wrestling industry for many years after this.
Yeah.
As we know, you know, Sting went and had a very long career in the TNA.
Sean says, well, apparently the second jab gives you sickness and diarrhea. Well, I hope fucking not. I really hope fucking not. That's the last thing I want.
Yeah, it was a very sad moment, this match. It was, and obviously don't forget, you know, WCW had already been under WWE ownership for a few days now, so when people talk about, you know, when did Sting make his debut for WWE, technically he was wrestling for the WWE in this program, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, I suppose this episode of Nitro acted as a kind of audition as well for all of these people, moving
Yeah.
forward in the WWE.
Just recognised Charles Robinson in this match. You know what? He's not aged much.
Well, I mean, that's because he blondes it,
I know he blondes his hair, but I mean his face.
Well, he was always a bit of a small guy, and he looked very young. I mean, they call him Little Nate, as in Little Nature Boy, as in Ric Flair's nickname, the Nature Boy.
I'm just looking at his facial reactions in this match. He's so funny.
But yeah, he got into refereeing because of Ric Flair. Actually, he was a big wrestling fan. He was a big Ric Flair fan, and Ric Flair encouraged him to get involved.
Sting with the submission is... Sting wins.
Yeah, as expected, and Sting, and it was a nice touch at the end, them hugging each other.
And the respect show between Sting and Ric Flair. And they exchange a big hug, which I think is not a hug of a good match. I think it's a hug of, not goodbye, but you know what I mean. It's
signifying the end of an era. I think both men knew that. They both propelled WCW to the big brand that it was.
Here's Vince McMahon.
Did they show the Jeff Jarrett bit in your episode? Yeah, they've cut that out, I think. And now for about 20 minutes or so, Vince McMahon goes on a long rant, basically praising himself for buying WCW. He's going to do a bit of a skit where he mentions the names of random WCW stars and looks at the crowd reaction to see who he should keep on. It's worth noting Sting, Goldberg and Buff Bagwell get big reactions, but Hogan and Lex Luger don't really get positive reactions.
Yeah.
And that's also an interesting point. After WCW got bought out, Randy Savage never returned to WWE. Lex Luger certainly didn't return in a wrestling capacity. Who else didn't come over? I'm trying to think. I can't remember who else didn't really come over.
It's a good promo by Vince, this.
Yeah, it's one of his best promos, I would say.
Yeah. I mean, Vince did some good promos back in the day. I mean, he's not really, obviously not much on television these days, and even when he is, his promos are not that great, but you can understand that.
Let's be honest. The whole events of WWE buying out WCW. This only literally happened days before WrestleMania. So this angle between Vince and Shane was going on for some time. I'm sure they had planned for some time that Austin was going to turn heel at WrestleMania in his home state. So WCW going out of business didn't. Sorry, I just laughed at the impression he did of Hulk Hogan. It was pretty funny. But I think WCW going out of business, it just really added some. To use a phrase that's been used earlier this evening in this conversation, it added a bit of spice to the proceedings. And I think it gave WrestleMania 17 more of that grand feel. It kind of felt like, I mean, and you probably agree that WrestleMania 17 is one of the best WrestleManias of all time, if not one of the best WrestleManias of all time. People generally say that. Everything about it was the pinnacle of the Attitude Era. It also, according to a lot of critics, marked the end of the Attitude Era, and I think a lot of that was to do with the fact that because WWE had gone out of business earlier that week, it was almost as if it was the ultimate victory for WWE. They had won the Monday Night Wars, and they effectively, put out of competition their biggest rival and the biggest threat to their existence. This very much felt like a celebration of that. But I don't see this as a case of big bad WWE putting WCW out of business. WCW went out of business because of the mistakes that they made. And AEW would do very well to kind of learn from those mistakes, which I think they are. I mean, obviously they've got a few issues, but it would surely take something quite epic to kind of fail on a WCW level ever again.
Hey, he's just going through the names now. Oh, Booker T gets a decent reaction.
Interesting you didn't mention DDP.
Scott Steiner gets a good reaction.
Lex Luger didn't.
No, neither did Hogan, surprisingly.
A lot of people seem to blame Hogan for leaving WWE, but, it was WWE that kind of let him go. And, if the if you think the AEW superfans are bad, back in the day it was very tribal.
Wow, Goldberg getting the biggest reaction of them all.
Of course, Goldberg was a superstar. And it was a shame that even by the time that he came to the WWE, he didn't really get half, the big feuds that he should have done. up to the bit with Shane McMahon?
No, not yet. I keep waiting for that bit, but the promo just keeps going on and on.
Oh, I hope I didn't spoil that for you, but I'm sure, as you probably
I already know about the Shane McMahon bit. I've seen that many times.
Yeah, he appeared on well, of course, you watched it on WrestleMania 17 video package. He was over on Nitro. And yeah, it is a shame that they ended the Nitro broadcast like that, to be honest. In the sense that, yeah, obviously they did video packages and tributes throughout the night, but it would have been nice for, like, you know, at the very end of the broadcast, for, you know, Tony Schiavone to have said something to the camera, you know, to the fans, you know, thank you for your years of support and everything, and, you know, whatever happens next, you know, we hope you'll join us again, wherever that might be. It would have been nice to have done it, but, you know, of course, you know, Vince McMahon was in charge now, so it was whatever WWE said happened.
Yeah.
I mean, to this day, I mean, it's, you know, I did say earlier it was a good thing, but, you know, of course, at the same time, I'd rather WCW had carried on, but who knows how long it would have carried on for.
Yeah.
If WWE was becoming more and more popular and bigger, much bigger, you know, eventually over time, you know, people like Goldberg would have gone over to the WWE.
Shane McMahon's music hits.
I mean, look at how much Shane McMahon has aged. I know this was 20 years ago.
Yeah, he has aged quite a lot.
He's aged quite, yeah, he has. He's aged an awful lot. He looks more out of shape now. His face.
I mean, I think if he dyed his hair to the colour it was back in these days still, if he dyed his hair, probably he'd look younger, but he let it go grey, which is fine if that's what he wants to do.
I mean, you know, dyeing your hair knocks off about 5 to 10, you know, maybe 15 years off your age, you know. Eventually, at some point, Tom, we'll all have to, me, you, John, Sean, we'll all have to start dyeing our hair at some point.
Yeah.
If we choose to, of course.
Yeah. I don't know what I'll do at that point, to be honest. I don't know whether to dye it or not. There's a lot of my hair to dye, so I don't know if I'll be asked to do it. Well, it depends how much I've got then, but I would hope I'd keep my hair for a long time.
Or do an Asuka.
Do multiple colours.
Bleach it and then do it blue and pink.
Yeah.
But we'll come on to WWE stuff after this has ended.
Yeah. Look at Vince's face, that's funny. I'd have liked to have seen WCW continue for a little bit and seeing what Shane could have done with Nitro and stuff like that, but it's a shame.
It wasn't well received. Like I said, when they did the segment on Raw,
Yeah.
prior to, during the invasion angle, it wasn't well received, and I think by that time, I think people had moved on from WCW, to be honest.
Yeah.
It had nothing left to offer to the industry.
That's finished.
So what's your review of that final episode of Nitro?
Well, I have to be honest. That final episode of Nitro, I enjoyed that very much. Definitely up for watching more Nitros. Definitely.
I think it's ironic that for me it was one of them in that period, in that like sort of 2-year period between that final Nitro and it was probably one of the better episodes of Nitro, and it's sad and ironic that it took to get to that stage for them to put on a decent show. But we're not developing as a brand, and I'll say that's the good thing that AEW are doing at the moment. They are not solely ratings driven. They are trying to develop AEW as a brand.
Yeah.
Don't forget today, wrestling benefits from social media. There's a lot more wrestling available to watch now than there was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
The internet, the fact that we're enjoying this stream at the same time as watching the wrestling, on-demand content, you didn't have that 20 years ago.
No, exactly. And, if we didn't have on-demand stuff, I couldn't be doing these streams. Well, I probably could find it somewhere. But, these streams that I do wouldn't be possible. And I'm thankful that there is, I'm thankful there is something like the WWE Network, so that there's so much back catalogue of stuff on the WWE Network, and obviously WWE stuff and WCW stuff, and ECW stuff. So you know what I mean. It's amazing how much stuff there is on WWE Network, and it was such. It was such a good invention. Like, I remember when it first came out, the WWE Network, and obviously it came out in the US first, and then the UK it came out, I think, about 4 or 5 months later, something like that, and I was waiting, and when it finally came out, I was just amazed by it. Like, obviously it's got a lot better over the years, but it was such a good invention from the WWE to do this.
Effectively the network killed off the idea of pay-per-view in terms of...
I mean, they still do, for people that don't want the WWE Network, they still do, like on BT Sport, for instance, they still charge 16 quid for a pay-per-view. For being honest, I'd rather pay $9.99 a month than pay £16 for just one pay-per-view, you know what I mean?
Well, that's the thing, it's not cost-effective to buy the individual pay-per-views if you just buy the network, and, dare I say this, and I'm not encouraging anybody here to do this, there are also other ways to access pay-per-views, than the official channels. I just wanted to make a quick point as well. And, Tom, I know I have your backing to say this. And, Tom, you've been doing this stream now for some time, and it's been really enjoyable. And I'm sure those of you who join us, whenever Tom does his stream when he can, we all have a good time, we all enjoy ourselves, and, this is I don't use the term very often, but this, you can consider this a safe space to feel free to talk about whatever you want to talk about, even if it's not related to wrestling. We're here to listen. But, please remember that myself and Tom, whether it's me as a moderator or Tom even running this channel, we do this in our spare time, in and amongst our own personal commitments. We have busy lives as well, and we do this, not just, for us, we do this for you guys as well. And, when we put the rules and the guidelines up, which I haven't done for a while, they're there for a reason. It's to kind of make this an enjoyable place for everybody. It's not just us being awkward or anything like that. And, there is another aspect to this as well. Facebook do monitor these pages. If people made complaints about the content of what we're discussing or whatever, or if we're broadcasting something that goes against the rules, The last thing we want is for this chat, this page, and this stream to be closed down, and not being able to do one ever again. So please bear that in mind. It's not fair to kind of attack us or Tom, for whatever reason. We're all normal human beings as well. We all have our own lives, and just be wary of your own sort of behaviour and the way you communicate with us as well. This is all in public view. People can read this. Your friends, your family, even random strangers can read what you're typing, and make sure you don't put anything out there that you wouldn't want people to kind of go back and quote or link to you, please. Or also, this isn't a PG chat by any imagination, but a bit of casual swearing here and there is fine. But think about the way that you type things. Think about the way that you communicate with each other. We're all grown adults here. We should all act our age, please.
Yeah.
I'm not going to make reference to some of the comments that were directed at me earlier this evening.
Yeah, let's not get into that. Yeah.
They were completely inappropriate. They'd be inappropriate in a face-to-face setting as they are online, and the language used is just vulgar language that you wouldn't use to your friends, to your family, or even someone in the street.
I mean, yeah.
And nobody should have to be exposed to that. It doesn't matter whether you're angry or you feel frustrated. There are ways to react to show your frustration. And that isn't it. And
no, it's not. No.
Please, please learn from that.
Yeah.
Even in the most extreme moments of the Attitude Era, we never had anything quite like that.
No,
so,
no.
Please bear that in mind, people, because it not only makes yourself look bad, but it ruins the enjoyment of the stream for other people as well. And it goes without saying. I think I hope I speak on behalf of everybody, Tom, that you're doing a great job with your stream.
I appreciate you saying that, Brahma. I will just add on to what you've said, and I'll end the stream after I've made this point. They just take the piss out of me, and they just keep doing the same thing over and over again, thinking I'm not going to do anything. And that is why tonight was the final straw. That was the final straw tonight, and that is it, basically. But all I will say is that please keep the chat to a certain point wrestling related. I don't mind you asking me questions like, what's your favourite chocolate, Tom? What's your favourite cereal? I don't mind you asking me generic questions, or if you want to ask me a question to get to know me better. I don't mind that. I like the fact that you want to get to know me better. But don't ask me really personal questions because I just won't answer them and you'll just get muted. It's as simple as that. I'm not going to be Mr. Nice Tom anymore because I've just had enough of people taking the piss out of me. It's, I don't mind. I'm a nice person. I will be nice to you. But you step out of line and that's it. I'm not gonna have it anymore. Like, it's just ridiculous. I want my stream to be a place where people can come, talk about wrestling or whatever, have a bit of fun, have a laugh, and and I want it to be inviting. Seeing that kind of stuff in the chat is not going to invite people in. It's not going to make people want to stay. And that, I've got nearly 200 followers, and that's amazing. But I've got hardly anybody that wants to stick around, and I have a feeling it's because, there's certain stuff in the chat that is just putting people off, and I don't want people to be put off by it. You know what I mean? I don't want that. So if in future we can keep the chat to a certain extent wrestling related, as I said, I don't mind you asking me random questions, or if you want to ask me stuff to get to know me better, that's fine. But please keep the inappropriate comments to yourself, and the personal questions keep to yourself, because I just won't answer them and you'll get muted. It's as simple as that. But anyway, I don't want to ramble on anymore.
Sure. If I can also add a quick point, Tom. Also, please remember that occasionally, very occasionally, but we do have some people who might be under the age of 18 or under 21 joining us on the stream, depending on their jurisdiction in terms of appropriateness of the chat. So, please be wary of that by the comments that you're saying, because, all it takes is for someone to make a complaint about the content of the chat on the stream, and it could get shut down for being inappropriate.
Exactly.
So,
and I know there's some people that wouldn't want my page shut down, and I'm one of them. I really don't want it shut down. I do enjoy doing this. It might surprise you when I say I enjoy doing it because I haven't done a stream for nearly 2 weeks, but it's just it's so difficult to do this consistently because it involves late nights because for a few different reasons, because all of the live wrestling stuff that is shown in the UK is all on really late because of when it is shown in the US. So obviously recently it's been earlier because obviously the clocks went forward in the US and they're going forward very shortly here, so it will go back to the usual times. But it involves me doing a lot of late nights, and it's so difficult to do that when I have to be up early to do my job and stuff like that. I mean, when I first started, I used to do it, and I used to go to work on pretty much no sleep, and I just can't do that anymore. I got burnt out doing it, and I refuse to do it anymore. That's why I've not promised to do every Raw and every SmackDown every week anymore. I promised I'll do every single pay-per-view, and unfortunately, Fastlane it just wasn't possible for me to do it, unfortunately, and I really hated myself for not doing it. But it is what it is. Sometimes it will happen, but if it is at all possible, I will do every single WWE pay-per-view. And as I said, I'm making up for the lack of streams. Coming up in a couple of weeks, I'm making up for the lack of streams by doing a stream every single day of the week. It will kill me. It will not physically kill me, but it will knacker me out. But luckily, I booked time off work for WrestleMania weekend, so obviously that's good. So yeah.
And I'm really looking forward to that as well. WrestleMania, it's the it's the first time crowds are going to be returning to a WWE event. We've got some big matches coming up. You know, potentially the last time we see Edge and Daniel Bryan in the WrestleMania main event. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean,
there's a lot that's happening.
There's a lot to look forward to, especially in WrestleMania week. The Raw before WrestleMania usually is always pretty decent. The SmackDown before WrestleMania is usually pretty decent, and then you've got the Hall of Fame. You've got Takeover Night 1 and Night 2, which I'm really looking forward to because the last NXT Takeover I watched was one of the best things I've watched in a long time. And then obviously you got the Hall of Fame, as I've mentioned, which I'm looking forward to. And then obviously you got WrestleMania weekend, so there's a lot of good stuff going on that weekend. It's going to be a crazy weekend. I'm looking forward to it. And one last thing I will say, I'll put this in a message as well nearer the time, just in case you don't see this stream. But what I will say is during WrestleMania week, well, anytime really, but especially during WrestleMania week. At WrestleMania itself, we are doing a bit of a watch party for it. John's going to be involved, Brahma's going to be involved, I believe Sean wants to be involved as well. So we're all going to be on a call at the same time doing a WrestleMania watch party. And but during the whole week, if anybody wants to join me on the stream for any of the streams, so Raw, Hall of Fame, Takeover Night 1 and Night 2, if you're a big NXT fan, or even if you're not, SmackDown, if anybody wants to join me for any of them, you're more than welcome. So yeah, I'll put that in a message near the time so that you see it. But yeah, anyway, thank you everybody for tuning into the stream, and
I just want to say one last thing about Nitro, just going back to WCW. It was great to join you in watching that. For me personally, growing up, I was for a point in time, I was a bigger WCW fan than I was. So it kind of means a lot that we got to kind of watch the last ever Nitro together and me talk about my experiences of watching it at the time and how I felt about WCW. It is something I think about a lot, in terms when I think about how I first got into wrestling, or some of the highlights of my sort of wrestling fandom. A lot of that involved watching WCW and Goldberg run, the NWO, Hulkmania reviving itself, Sting. So I enjoy doing that with this sort of thing. Wrestling is popular, but it's not as mainstream as you think it is. It's not as if we've got millions of people to discuss this with. So it's nice being in this type of an environment, and it should always be a welcoming environment for everybody. Whether you're a wrestling fan or a non-wrestling fan.
Yeah.
And we hope if you're a non-wrestling fan, you end up becoming a wrestling fan. But please remember that, folks. First and foremost, this should be a welcoming place for everybody, regardless of who you are, and we want you to keep coming back. I'm sure Tom wants you all to keep coming back and supporting the channel and supporting his streams. And with that, all I can say is thank you very much, Tom, for tonight, and thank you everyone for joining us. And I will see you again at some point.
Yeah. As I say, thank you everybody for joining me for the stream. I'm sorry for some of the stuff on the stream, but it is what it is. And I'll see you for the next one. When will the next one be? Well, I'm in work Monday, so I won't do a stream tomorrow. But I'm off Tuesday to Friday, so I've got 4 days off, so I'll do a stream. I'm not going to say I'll do one every day. I probably won't do one Friday, but I'll try and do one perhaps Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We'll see. I've not decided what I'm doing on them streams yet, but I'll let you know near the time. Okay, thank you. And I shall see you next time. Bye-bye.